Hi guys, welcome back to the Clinical CEO podcast with me, your host, Ro. This is a podcast where we discuss all things health and care business related. So on this episode, we have Anthony from Transitions Housing, which is a provider for supported accommodation and supported living across the East Midlands and, as I found out, across everywhere. So we're going to hear all about how he started just himself in COVID, and he has scaled massively 56 members of his staff team across the country and with well over 100 units, where he provides a lot of support with his staff team, some of the most vulnerable members of society. So this is a really interesting episode where we hear about how he did that and some takeaway messages for you guys. So stay tuned. Hi, Anthony.
Hello, Rose.
So welcome to the podcast. Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you doing?
Not bad, not bad.
Hey, you've had a bit of a stressful day today.
Yeah, it's always a busy day. Every day is a different problem to solve.
A different problem, yeah. And you've had to fire a couple of people today. You've had to have a lot of roadworks on your journey here. It's just all been going on. So thank you for still coming.
It's all right.
So tell me a bit about yourself, who you are, what you do.
Okay, so I'm Anthony Wallace. I run an organisation called Transitions Housing Solutions. We provide supported accommodation, emergency accommodation and supported living.
Okay. Now, can you tell us what are all of those things? Because that's a lot of words. What do they mean?
So supported accommodation is basically where we accommodate people that are experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. We provide support to them on a one-to-one basis, anything up to 5 hours a week, depending on what the needs are. They're referred to us by the local authority, different stakeholders within the Nottinghamshire area. And yeah, people can make direct referrals if they're working with a professional.
So that's supported accommodation.
It is, yeah.
And is that the same as supported living?
No. So supported living is for people with higher support needs. Generally, they have an adult social care package,
Okay.
which then basically they have an assessment with the social services, the adult social care team. They will determine whether they need a higher level of support, which is funded by adult social care. And we have people that live in accommodation. We have a couple of schemes where we have solo placements. So we have people that have got really complex needs, mental health, substance misuse. They will have a staff member that's with them 24 hours a day. We have people that live in a scheme where we have a block of flats and they have staff on site 24 hours a day. Some people have one-to-one staffing, some people have two-to-one staffing.
Okay. And then the supported living, higher needs, they might have mental health difficulties or whatever else. And they
Misuse, things like that.
Yeah.
Learning difficulties.
So they can't look after themselves as independently.
It's a sliding scale. Some people can live independently, but they have kind of complex care needs that they need support with, end up becoming homeless. And then because he can't cook for himself, he can't clean for himself, he can't do any of the kind of normal expected things that adults should be able to do without any support, he lives in one of our schemes at the moment.
So he's in a supported
He's in a supported living, yeah.
living scheme. You do both of those.
We do both, yeah.
Is there anything else that you do as well?
We do emergency accommodation. So that's for families and single people that are homeless but don't have support needs. We manage properties on behalf of care companies. So we act as a housing provider for the care companies where they will do the complex care needs, and then we just manage the properties on their behalf.
Now, for some people that may not know, what is the difference between what you guys do and, say, a care home? What would you say the difference is?
So the idea of supported living is it's for people that do need a lot more support or care, but don't need the wraparound care that would be given in our care home. So they don't need to be restricted, although we do have some people that are going through court protection at the moment because they've been deemed not to have capacity, but generally they're pretty much free to go as and when they want to, do what they want to do because they've been deemed to have capacity.
And what kind of homes are these like? So obviously a care home, if you think of a care home for the elderly, there might be, for example, 20 beds. Everyone has their own individual room. What is the accommodation like, both in the supported living and the supported
living?
Supported living and supported accommodation. Yes, go on.
So supported accommodation with a range of HMOs. We have some blocks of flats scattered across the county. And what we do is we typically let people move into a HMO, see how they cope in that for a few months. Once they've got a little bit more independence, they're on a better place. We then move them onto the self-contained units and then use that as a stepping stone to then help them move on to long-term independent accommodation.
Okay. So the aim is they come to you, but they don't stay with you lifelong generally.
No. Obviously, people stay for a different amount of times. We have people that stay for 3 months. We have people that have been there for 2 years.
Yeah.
Right.
And what do you aim for? Is there anything you aim for?
Ultimately, the aim is to give them the skills that they need to move on to independent accommodation and be able to sustain a tenancy.
Yeah. And I think that's incredible what you're doing there. And I think there can be a bit of a bad name when it comes to
Definitely.
a very bad name.
Absolutely.
I suppose some people are doing it for financial incentive, right? So I suppose that's the reason for the bad name.
There's lots of different reasons. People go into it for the wrong reason, like you say. They're trying to generate a higher level of income for properties. Some people just don't provide the service that they're actually being funded to provide.
Yeah.
And some people are just wanting to make as much money as possible and don't really care about the consequences and the effect it's having on the residents.
And I think it's a tough balance because when you're in business, you have to earn money. I think anyone that says otherwise is completely wrong. Why would you do it for free, number one? But number two, you can't sustain it and support the people you need to do if you don't do it properly.
Correct.
And look after the numbers. But it's amazing to know that people can come to a supported living environment and develop the skills to then move on to be independent. And that should be celebrated and it shouldn't have a bad name, in my opinion. So yeah, thank you for what you're doing there. How did you get into this?
2020, when there was lockdown, I used to work as an electrical engineer. We weren't able to do the work we were doing at the time, which was working on trains and power stations. So I used to work within a supported housing environment when I was at uni. I then spoke to a couple of probation officers I knew. They basically said we're struggling to house people. Obviously, because I've worked in the environment, we got a property, we kind of started working with probation and things just kind of snowballed from there.
Did you actively pursue that or did it
It kind of
towards you?
It was a bit of both. So I just had time on my hands because we weren't working, we were put on furlough. And then I had a property that we could use for supported accommodation. Spoke to a couple of probation officers that came out. They did an assessment on the property, said they were happy with it. We spoke to the local authority housing benefit team, found out what the process was. And then, we just kind of went from there.
You make it sound quite simple.
Definitely not simple.
So from the moment that you decided to do this to actually, I suppose, really going, having people that were using the accommodation, earning money, what was the timescale like?
Because it's funded by housing benefit, there's an assessment process that you have to go through for each property. So they basically want to check that you are providing the support. They want to find out how that support's funded, and they want to make sure the property is at an adequate standard, meets all the fire safety regulations, licensed if it needs to be licensed, the quality of furnishings and everything. So ultimately they're paying an increased level of rent to provide a service. The local authority, the housing benefit team will always check to make sure that that is being provided.
And how long did that take you then, all in all?
First property we did, it took, I think it was actually quite quick. So it took about 3 months from the day we got the property to going into payment. Obviously we then kind of got a few more properties, and it just kind of snowballed from there. Things are changing at the moment. There's a lot more scrutiny at the moment. There's a lot more providers wanting to get into the space, a lot more people wanting to get into the space. There's changes within the legislation and legal changes. Local authorities are now being put under a responsibility of making sure they regulate the services that are being provided in the area. Up until probably last year, most local authorities didn't even know how many providers they had in the area or what their accommodation standards were, what type of accommodation they had. There's been a lot of work around that by an organisation called Homeless Link, where they've kind of done a review of all the properties within Nottinghamshire to see how many bed spaces each provider's got, what type of accommodation, how many people they've got in the accommodation, what the needs are of the people that are being referred, who's referring them. There's been a massive piece of work at the moment because up until last year when the new supported housing bill was introduced or was discussed, there just was no regulation.
I guess it's so hard because the council, the local authorities are already under so much pressure as it is, right? So then how do you add extra things onto their list? But then this does have to be regulated and looked at, presumably. I mean, I'm not in the space myself, but if you've got people that aren't providing a care, then what are you meant to do?
Again, it's down to regulation.
Yeah.
It's not that the local authority think people aren't doing it. It's that they know there's a small number of people, I'm assuming, that aren't doing the things they should be doing, that aren't providing the support, that aren't making sure properties are safe and habitable, that aren't dealing with issues with property management such as antisocial behaviour, even down to simple things, checking whether the bins have been emptied. There's a lot of responsibility on the provider to ensure that that's a safe environment.
What stage are you at now? So obviously you started around COVID time. Give us an idea, perhaps how many properties or how many residents?
So property-wise, we've probably got about, for supported accommodation, I think we've got about 104 units.
Wow.
Supported living, we've got about 10 units. And emergency accommodation, we've got about 5. And then we've got about 16 care providers we manage properties for as well.
That's amazing.
And that covers Nottingham, Hull, Doncaster. And then we're just in the process of being onboarded into Staffordshire and Stoke.
How have you managed all this?
Lots of grey years.
A lot of stress. Is it just you that does this?
I run the company.
Yeah.
I have a good staff team. So we've got a service manager, we've got a service coordinator, we've got a maintenance team, we've got support workers. I think we've got about 56 staff at the moment.
56.
Yeah.
So you started with your business partner,
Yeah.
parted ways. Around furlough time, you had one, and then it snowballed, right?
Yeah.
I'm struggling to see how they get to over 100.
The demand's there. Obviously, we get a lot of commission projects where the local authority will say to us, actually, we've got a pot of money.
Yeah.
What can you do with that pot of money? We'll provide, for example, one of the latest ones we've done is with Mansfield Council, where we provided 20 bed spaces of supported accommodation, which is for your entrenched rough sleepers, called a winter night shelter. So rather than putting people in a big hall, making camp beds, we basically got those properties, put them in the properties, and we support them to move on to independent accommodation.
Amazing.
So
the funding wasn't all from your own pocket then? Because
actually, yes,
it was, okay, yeah. And then it became...
It's a business, so it becomes self-sufficient.
Okay. And how long did you find that took?
Because we've continually been growing, it's always, everything's been reinvested into the business. So I would say probably 4 years.
4 years, okay. But until that point, it was all out of your own pocket before you were starting to be able to see any of it back, basically. Are you able to give an idea of how much you had to put in the beginning?
I would say for the first property, we spent probably about £12,000.
And you started off renting?
Yeah.
And is that what you still do now?
Yeah, all our properties are leased.
At least. And why is that?
The biggest reason is because if you go and buy a property, you put in a big chunk of money which could actually acquire 5 properties. So to buy a property, you're going to put £50,000 deposit down, £20,000, whichever the number may be, and on the cost of the property. Whereas to acquire a property, you can spend £6,000, £7,000, furnish it, £10,000, you can have a property up and running and generating income.
Yeah, I mean, simple maths, I guess. Yeah, it depends what your goals are. Some people are in property for the long term, they just want to let and forget. But I guess in your...
Because you're managing on a day-to-day basis, it's because I was in the process of wanting to grow and grow to a certain point, which I've hit now. Yeah, that was just the quickest way.
Quickest way to get there.
Yeah.
What were your goals then at that point? Because you said you wanted to get to this point. Was it to leave work? Like, what was...
No, I mean, in the first year or so, I still continued working. So what I used to run the business in the daytime. I used to work at night time, and then I had staff that would do the support.
And then sleep. Okay, sounds intense, but it got you where you needed to be. Right. So you wanted to leave work?
Yeah, that was always the goal. Obviously, this is something that I was passionate about, and I used to do it before, and I got the opportunity to do it for myself. Whereas previously I was working for other companies, didn't totally agree with their ethic and some of the rules and some of the things that we had to do. I got the opportunity to do it the way I wanted to do it and do it right, I guess.
What were the ways you wanted to do it? What are the values you try and instill in your business?
When I used to work for a couple of housing associations, there was quite a hard line where if someone did something, breached the house rules, they just automatically kick them out, and there wasn't an opportunity for them to kind of work towards rectifying that. There wasn't an opportunity to give them the support and guidance that they needed to not break the rules or not do the things that we're doing. There was no opportunity to kind of look into why people were doing things, why people are taking drugs, what past trauma they've had. There wasn't the opportunity to signpost them to suitable services to work with their issues such as substance misuse. It was pretty much, you break the rules, you move out.
But they are going to break the rules if that's all they've ever known.
It's part and parcel. If you go from an environment where you have no rules and you do what you want, and then you put in an environment where actually you do need to stick to some house rules, you do need to do certain things, you do need to engage in support.
It's almost
a
fair thing to...
You're going from nothing to everything. Do you know what I mean? It's a culture shock.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's easy for people to judge and say, well, I'd never do that. But if you haven't lived it, you don't...
And again, there's a reason for everything. People don't go and take drugs generally for no reason. It's an escapism.
Yeah, exactly. Now, how was it with the staff team then? Because if you're starting off just yourself, how did you then end up scaling to... How many staff do you have, sorry?
About 56.
56. How did you get from you to 56? How did that work out?
So initially I had a couple of volunteers that helped out with the support just to get things up and running. I then ended up employing them. One of them still works for me at the moment. Yeah, we just kind of went from there. We got a couple of commission projects that were funded by the local authority, which I might add isn't always the case. Sometimes you do have to self-fund, which is why we started doing the other business activities. We started with emergency accommodation. We do the management of other properties so that all generate an income.
so that you can fund it.
Correct. The supported living is probably the biggest one.
Yeah.
That is quite a good income generator.
Yeah. Now, how did you employ all this stuff then?
Just through advertising through Indeed, obviously going through the interview process, your safe recruiting process, and just making sure you employ the right people that have the same kind of moral compass, I guess, that want to help people. A lot of people we find do come and do jobs and just don't really want to do the job. It's not really what I'm about.
How do you find those people though? How do you filter those ones out?
Trial and error.
Trial and
Everybody, when you do an interview, they say all the right things. They want to get the job. They do what they need to do to get the job. It's about constantly assessing them. It's constantly monitoring and auditing what they're doing and how they do it. We've got a good management team at the moment that will go out and do audits. They will go out and kind of spend time with the staff to see what they're doing. So yeah, there's having the right processes in place.
do you have a probation period?
So you do, yeah. We have a 6-month probation period. So we do kind of annual appraisals. We do monthly monthly supervisions. We do appraisals at the end of the probation period. So there's lots of things.
How did you learn to do that? Did you have any guidance on this?
I did, yeah. So in the first year and a half, we kind of just trial and error.
Yeah.
I then recruited a HR consultant. And so she kind of deals with all the HR stuff. We can ring her up if we've got an issue. What do we do in this situation? What do we do in that situation? This has happened. She'll guide us and then tell us what we need to do. She kind of deals with all the paperwork side. We've got a couple of systems that we use to manage kind of staff, annual leave, payroll and stuff like that.
So when you first started out, was this very much teaching yourself on the job, or did you have people around you that were doing it also?
No, it was pretty much trial and error. I mean, the support side of the business, yes, I get that. I've done it before. I understand it. The business side of it, not so much. But again, we just kind of found a way through.
Was it all your skill set that was coming into this? Did you need to implement other skill sets?
No, I'm
quite
a self-sufficient person, so I do a lot of things myself. And you make bad decisions, I make good decisions. Just luckily, I made more good than bad.
What do you think if someone was to employ a consultant? You know, there's supported living consultants out there. They say, okay, I'll guide you from start to finish. Would you have had one of those if you'd have had your time again and you could have done things differently?
So that's a bit of a loaded question. So,
okay.
When I first started, I did look into it.
Yeah.
Just because I wanted that peace of mind. During that first year and a half, I had so many people contact me to say that yes, they've employed a consultant to set them up a CQC business, get them set up a supported accommodation, various other business models. They've paid them and had nothing in return. They just disappear because obviously there were so many restrictions at the time. People were doing a lot of things remotely. And yeah, I'd probably say in space of 6 months, I had probably 8 or 9 people contact me saying that they've paid a consultant, they can't get hold of them. And I'd help them get them out of a situation. Some of them I were able to help. Some of them I didn't have the skill set to be able to help them. So yeah, I do a bit of consultancy myself. I have kind of helped a few people set up supported living companies in the Nottinghamshire area. I'm in the process of helping a couple of companies now, one in Sheffield and one in Stoke, just get their supported living business up and running. Helping them with tender writing and stuff like that. So
do you think it is helpful to have that?
It's helpful if you have the right consultant.
Okay, yeah.
And that's the key. Obviously, if anyone's looking at going down the consultancy route, references, and make sure it's on a basis that's, result driven. So you pay for a certain amount, you get a result, you then pay for another certain amount, and it's got to be
Not all in one.
Yeah, never give anyone all of the money up front, because at the end of the day, you've got nothing to come back for.
It's difficult because I can see why people would choose to have a consultant. I mean, I'd consider it if you've not got any experience in the sector at all, then why would you just make some very expensive mistakes, right?
The one thing I would say is if you haven't got experience in the sector, people tend to underestimate how technical it can be. The biggest issue would be working with housing benefit, for example. There's so many regulations and requirements and so much evidence that needs to be provided. If you're not experienced in the sector, 100% go down the consultancy route, because it will save you a lot of money in the long run. I've lost thousands and thousands of pounds because I've made mistakes.
Tell me about one of your shocking mistakes.
The most shocking mistake I would say is relying on other people. So we employed a housing management officer. They were supposed to be putting the housing benefit claims in, for example. Didn't do it. And again, it's about monitoring your staff and making sure people are doing the job that they need to do. We had a person that was living in the property, chased up their claim, no claim. They'd been living in the property for about 2 months. And it's not a massive amount of money, but if you are starting out, it's a costly mistake.
Well, because you might not be able to ride that out, right? You might not be able to afford 2 months of no pay, or you're paying out all of that.
Yeah, especially because you're paying the electric, the gas, the water, all the utilities. You're furnishing the property, you're paying for the rent, the property, or mortgage, depending on what the situation may be.
And if your margins are so tight, then, and you just started out, then
Yeah.
no buffer.
Correct. And there are instances where housing benefit might take 9 months to even assess you before you get paid.
What do you do?
Again, this is why you have to be financially able to sustain that.
Yes,
So
that big chunk
you
of
do,
money
yes.
before you even.
I would always say, if you haven't got enough money to sustain yourself for 6 months, you're going to struggle.
So how would someone know how much money they need if they want to start up a supported living business?
Start doing a decent business plan.
Yeah.
That would be the starting point, and doing your research and finding out what things cost, what it costs to provide the service, and what happens if for whatever reason you don't get paid for 6 months.
How can they do that?
Research.
Online, it's all there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the thing. So with everything, the internet's really powerful. You've got tools like ChatGPT, you've got tools like Google, you can speak to other providers, which I would thoroughly recommend just to get an oversight. Go and do work experience, or go and work in the environment and get the experience. I've had several people that have gone and worked for housing associations to understand what it is that's required, because they hadn't worked in the environment, but they were hell-bent on doing that.
How did you write your business plan?
I didn't.
You didn't.
I winged it. I wouldn't recommend it for
Worked
any.
well for you,
It did for me.
but you didn't have a profit and loss. You didn't have those spreadsheets.
No, I just winged it.
Okay.
And again, when I first started, I didn't expect to get to the point where I am now. It was just something to pass the time and something to kind of give a little bit back to the local community.
Yeah.
So
Well, I suppose it's worked for you, but you wouldn't recommend it.
definitely wouldn't recommend it.
No. Even though it's gone very well, let's not advise anyone else to do.
No, 100% don't do what I did.
What would you advise someone just starting out? They're keen to start a supported living business.
Yeah.
What would you recommend?
If you've not worked in the environment, go and do some work experience. Go and work in that environment and understand what it is. The reason I say that, supported accommodation can be very challenging. Supported living even more so, because the needs of the individuals are so much more complex. I've had tenants that have punched me, kicked me, been really abusive, smashed houses up, done dirty protests. It's not for the faint-hearted.
I think that's really good advice, because if you go and do work experience there and you realize this isn't for me, at least you know then, and you've not put any money behind it. Because it's
Try before you buy.
Try before you buy. That's a good way to do it. Right. So what is next for you then, Anthony?
At the moment, I am just in the process of applying to start up a family assessment centre.
Amazing.
So that will be where, I don't know, for example, somebody's about to have the child taken off them. So then what will happen is they'll go to court. The court will basically say, you have a choice of we remove the child from the family, or you go to a family assessment centre. The staff will then kind of assess their parenting capabilities. They stay for 3 months, depending on the situation and depending on the court order. And then within that 3 months, they've got an opportunity to prove that they can look after that child and keep that child safe. So yeah, that's next on the agenda.
That sounds amazing. What would be your role within that? Do you oversee?
So I'll just be overseeing it. So I have a business partner that I'm working with, who actually works in one. She's a social worker that works in a family assessment centre.
And she assesses this.
She does all the assessments.
Yeah. So you wouldn't get involved in that.
No, that's not my area of expertise. So,
but you're going to work together. She's going to do that side, and then you're going to do, I suppose, the housing side of things.
Yeah. So we'll take care of the property and do all the property maintenance, compliance, stuff like that.
Yeah, sounds amazing. Great to have you on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
No problem.
All right. Cheers.